Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host, and we're back with another innovator interview. We want to talk about sustainable packaging. You know, packaging made of paper and plastic has transformed the retail and home shopping experience over many decades and across many generations of new materials that have been introduced to change the way that we interact with the products and packaging that we use. We also know that these boxes and mailer envelopes are piling up in homes and back rooms at retailers around the world. How do we clean these things up? How do we get them recycled? And how do we reduce our overall waste is an important question to think about as we try to turn our economy to a more sustainable alternative today than today's approach. Our guest is Wes Carter. He is the president of Atlantic Packaging, a Wilmington, North Carolina-based maker of boxes, shipping solutions, recyclable mailers, and recyclable six-pack carriers, among other services and support that it provides to the complex supply chains that feed our lifestyles. Atlantic Packaging is working to reduce its environmental impact and its waste profile at every step between a manufacturer and the home. You can learn more about it, Atlantic Packaging that is, at Atlantic Package, PKG, atlanticpkg.com. Check it out. Welcome to the show, Wes. How are you? I hope you're having a good day.
I am. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're being very graceful because this is the third time we've tried to record the beginning of the show, and I apologize for all of the confusion so far.
Hey man, we've all fallen victim to the video Zoom chats and things like that. It's all good.
Well, thank you for your understanding. So I want to start off first and foremost by just asking a nomenclature question. How do you define sustainable packaging? How does that definition drive your design philosophy?
You know, sustainability for me is a pretty complex thing. So I actually don't think of it, you know, when I look at like a specific definition. Sustainability primarily is, you know, packaging that does not end up polluting our environment, you know, plain and simple. I mean, if we are creating packaging that is leaking out into the environment and is creating pollution, then it's not very sustainable. But, you know, and I think one of the areas that people get a little bit off is like, you're looking for a specific material. Is this material sustainable or is it not? And it's a lot more complex than that. So when we're looking at sustainability, it can mean circularity. It can mean keeping products in circularity so they never end up in the environment, or it can mean creating products that knowing that they're, you know, a likelihood that some will leak out into the environment, and those products being quickly biodegradable, which I define in less than 6 months. So at the end of the day, for me, sustainability just means no chance of pollution, plain and simple.
Well, so what are you working to improve as you think about your business? Is it adoption of standardized materials that are biodegradable, a simplification of the packaging that we use? What are the major trends that people should be paying attention to?
Well, Atlantic, we're a really complex organization. We've been in business 75 years, and today we're the largest privately held packaging company in North America. And we work with major consumer products companies across pretty much every vertical: food, beverage, medical, building products, e-commerce. And the way that I look at sustainability is I break the supply chain into two categories: business to business packaging and business to consumer packaging. And so for most of your viewers, the business to consumer packaging is where everyone's really focused. And with e-commerce being so robust these days, everybody is focused on all this packaging that ends up at our house. So in that part of the supply chain, we are really focused on creating packaging products that are, first of all, curbside recyclable. And if they do end up in the environment, will break down in less than 6 months. So that primarily means fiber-based type products. We recycle paper really well in this country. We do not recycle plastic very well, especially at the curb. So we are looking to transition a lot of single-use plastic packaging products, things like bubble wrap and air pillows and foam, that are not curbside recyclable. And also, if they end up in the environment, they stay there for hundreds of years. We're working to transition those products to fiber-based products that are, primarily made from wood, but also other, there's grass products and hemp products coming to market. Exactly. So fiber-based products is where we're really focused on in the business to consumer packaging. And then in business to business packaging, we are really focused on circularity, primarily because it's a lot easier to create closed loop systems between businesses. Creating closed loop systems from businesses to hundreds or millions and millions of consumers is a lot more difficult.
Absolutely. And it sounds like one of the things you're describing is that you've embraced, at least at the B2B level, the extended producer responsibility idea that you steward the materials that you ship and use in your products. How are you thinking about the collection of this material from retail? Are you developing programs, or do you find that retailers are beginning to be better about getting that material back into the recycling system?
That's one of the most exciting things that we're working on is creating those closed loop systems in that business to business sector. The real challenges are, that the waste obviously doesn't have tremendous value. And so, especially right now, you look how diesel fuel, it's very expensive to ship waste around. So One of the real challenges is working with the consumer products companies or the retailers to find logistically, how do we backhaul waste to coordinated locations and consolidate it so then it can be recycled in a really efficient manner. And then one of the things I love about sustainability, in order for those closed loop systems to work between businesses, it requires a level of transparency between organizations that traditionally has not been how people do business. It's more like push, pull, win, lose, and
keep your secrets and hope everybody else doesn't figure out your secrets.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, the way that our business, that our economy works, businesses are always negotiating for a little better position. But one of the beautiful things to me about sustainability in these closed loop systems is, in order for it to work, I can have the recycling infrastructure at Atlantic, and we're making those investments, but I have to have a lot of coordination with our customers to consolidate the waste. I have to get clean waste, and then that piece requires a level of transparency that is honestly breaking down a lot of walls that have traditionally been in business, which I think is really healthy. And it's also a lot of fun.
Well, and it wouldn't have been possible until very recently because of the emergence of digital technology too. The other major area that when we talk with retailers is an issue is the right sizing of the boxes, the packaging that they're getting, and because they'll get it all on a pallet, they'll move it off the pallet, then they'll break it down and put on another pallet, wrap it again, and send it somewhere else. And a lot of that is empty space. You mentioned the air pillow padding that goes into the boxes a few moments ago. Is it possible to start thinking about right sizing packaging and manufacturing packaging on the fly for an e-commerce company or a retailer to be able to send out something that doesn't require padding and would not be damaged in shipping as a result?
What you just articulated is the number one priority right now. Okay. And one of the hurdles to a lot of sustainable packaging, especially when you're moving from single-use plastic to fiber-based products, is by the pound or the ounce. Fiber-based products tend to be slightly more expensive, or they can be significantly more expensive. And so the way that we are offsetting a lot of those costs is through right-sizing packaging. And there is tremendous investment by people like Amazon, as a matter of fact. Yeah. How do we create automated systems that identify a product and create packaging on the fly that fits the product itself? There is tremendous amount of energy and investment going into that very thing. Because again, if the material is more expensive, but we can optimize the material and right size it, we can actually spend more money on the material and create more sustainable products and maybe even save money doing it. And a big part of Atlantic's business, we call it packaging optimization. That's a big part of our value proposition and why we believe we're in a pretty good position to help facilitate a lot of these changes, because it can't just be a profit suck for companies to go more sustainable. It has to be paired with a technological advancement to optimize and offset some of the increasing costs.
Does that mean that you need to do more of your actual production of the packaging at your customers' locations? Do you need a more distributed approach to manufacturing as a result? Because as we were beginning the conversation, you were talking about the locations near where you are today. But I get the impression that you're going to be making boxes literally everywhere in the future. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the whole marketplace is going, where, you will, as an example, as opposed to selling individual mailers. Like we sell a lot of curbside recyclable paper mailers, but it's a pre-made mailer that is manually stuffed. Like in the future, those mailers will come on a roll. It will be, a roll of mailer material. And as products are going down a conveyor belt, there'll be a robotic with an optical sorter that'll be taking a picture of the product. And then that material will be cut, sealed, created on the fly for whatever product that is, whatever size it is. So yes, the packaging in essence will be made in these facilities. And there is a fair amount of that that's already being done. It just hasn't been done with a lot of fiber-based material. The reality is right-sizing plastic is a lot easier. It's easy to right-size plastic. Right-sizing paper, especially at very high speed, is a lot more challenging. So that's really where a lot of investment is. But right-sizing packaging is nothing new. It's just new in the sense of with some of these more sustainable materials, it's a lot more challenging.
What is your impression of the opportunity to rethink the B2C, the consumer retail packaging using fiber instead of plastic? Because a lot of retail product packaging is designed to display the product on a shelf hanger and to be too large to put into your pocket and walk out of the store. But if you're doing most of your shopping online, or if we could get people to rethink what they buy in the store, could we use fiber instead of plastic a lot more than we do today?
Absolutely. And that is a big push, and that's happening a lot. We have a lot of our traditional customers that sold, products on the retail shelf that spent a lot of money on having a really fancy package. So when you're walking down the aisles of the store, it catches your eye. Now it catches your eye when you're looking at your laptop. And so they're waking up to the fact, a lot of it's about cost. Why are we spending so much money on this packaging and then putting it in a box and shipping it to somebody's house? They've already made the buying decision by then. So there is a big transition, and it's not just away from, plastic packaging, although it's a big piece of it. It's also like, we don't need to print high graphics on this product anymore. Right. At the same time, with retail being less of a focus for consumers, where people aren't going into stores as much, when you get into higher end products, there are a lot of these organizations that want to be sure that the unboxing experience at your house still has a luxury feel, as an example. Yeah. So the higher end products, they are actually really focused on the experience of opening their product at your home. So there's a little bit of a balance there between sort of commodity everyday products and more high-end luxury products. But again, it is allowing for us to get away from a lot of the traditional plastic packaging that was primarily used for showcasing a product on a shelf. Right.
The retail aesthetic is kind of moving into the past, and we're going somewhere new. And I think your Fishbone recyclable 6-pack carrier is a good example of this. It's biodegradable. And I happen to have worked with some can companies. They're spending more than ever on printing on the can. So they want that to be easily visible. They don't want the plastic, or the 6-pack container made of cardboard all around it. They just want the carrier so that you can see the beautiful graphics. That's what you were just talking about. How can somebody find out whether or not they've got one of your products so they know that it can be recycled at retail? Is there labeling that is starting to emerge that says this is compostable, this is something that you want to buy, and what should they be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, there obviously you do see the how to recycle logo on a lot of packaging now, which typically has a QR code that you can scan on your phone. But we've started an initiative at Atlantic called a New Earth Project, and the idea was we really wanted to empower consumers and provide information and a certification that said the packaging that has a New Earth logo on it, we certify that this is curbside recyclable. It's made from renewable resources. And if it ends up in the environment, it'll break down in 6 months or less. So that is it's an Atlantic initiative, but we're working with a lot of our packaging partners that we purchase packaging from to try to create this standard as much as anything to help consumers understand. And you'll be able to go to a newearthproject.com, which again is a part of Atlantic. It's an Atlantic initiative where we will articulate all of that information. And that a New Earth project launches on Earth Day this year on April the 22nd. So people can come visit Atlantic at atlanticpkg.com, but I would also encourage people to go to a newearthproject.com, because that's where we will house a lot of information about this retail packaging and why we really support fiber-based packaging direct to consumer.
Do you see that the packaging industry in general is moving towards that standardization? Because that recyclable label can be very problematic. We hear from people all the time that say, yeah, it says it, but I can't actually do it where I am.
Yeah, I think the recycling labeling has been really problematic. It's confusing for me, and I'm in this industry. And so again, we're trying to really simplify it. And the reality is, the recycling infrastructure in this country and really all around the world is really convoluted. I think there's estimated somewhere like 11,000 municipal recycling facilities in the United States, and most of them are privately held. We don't even have a recycling standard in this country. And so what you can recycle in Charleston versus what you can recycle in Seattle is different. And we are at Atlantic working with a lot of policymakers, even at the federal level, trying to push for some standards there. But again, one of the reasons that I really support fiber-based packaging is because if it's made of fiber and you can recycle it pretty much, I haven't yet defined a municipal recycling facility that wouldn't take paper. That's pretty ubiquitous. And again, if it's made from fiber and it ends up in a river or a lake or an ocean, it's going to break down in 6 months. And so to me, that makes it real simple. We don't have to worry about, is it a number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? It's made of paper. It's recyclable. And if it ends up in the environment, it'll break down. And so I'm a simple guy. And so I've tried to simplify my value proposition as well.
Well, and I think that you're really calling out an important point, which is we do recycle about 68% of the paper in this country. We're pretty darn good at it. That's, in fact, other than aluminum, actually in the United States, we're even below that on aluminum. So as you think about operations within Atlantic, are you also looking to reduce your carbon footprint? I read your sustainability report. You're aiming to reduce your scope 1 and 2 carbon footprints by 50% compared to 2019 by 2030, and to eliminate your carbon footprint entirely by 2050. How's that progressing? And what are the big challenges that you face in terms of lowering your footprint?
Yeah, we're very, very committed to that. I really believe when you look at climate change, energy and fuel burn is really where we all need to be focused. So as a company that is working to be the most sustainable packaging company in the world, we have to walk the walk, and we want to walk the walk. I want to set the example. So we really love making these investments. So we've made huge investments, especially on our scope 2. Scope 2 is basically the energy that we burn, and that's one we have a lot of control over, and there's a lot of technology available right now for that. Our biggest challenge, quite honestly, is just growth. We grew our business over 20% last year, and we grew our business 20% the year before that. And so, every year when you're growing at those kind of rates, your carbon footprint is increasing and increasing and increasing. So you're always sort of chasing growth.
Is your carbon intensity declining?
Our carbon intensity is declining. We've installed, we made a major investment in solar, and we're 2 years into that rollout. We hope to have that complete by 2023. And that's all on site, and that will offset 50% of our scope 2 emissions with on-site solar. And then we're in the process of putting together a virtual purchase power agreement with several other major packaging companies, which is basically an agreement to do off-site solar. So I really think we'll be net zero for scope 2 within about 24 months. The nice thing about the virtual purchase power agreement, it's accepted by science-based targets and the Carbon Disclosure Project, because you actually are investing in building solar that's feeding the grid. And you can scale it. The problem with on-site solar is pretty hard to scale. When you get to a certain point, there's just nowhere else to go, and it's highly regulated by the municipalities. But yeah, we're making great progress there. And then the other area, our scope 1, is really about electrifying our fleet, which I feel like we're a great candidate for, and I can articulate that. We've ordered trucks from Tesla, tractor trailers, and we're waiting on those. And we've gone ahead and started to transition all of our fleet vehicles, like the trucks and cars that our technicians drive and specialists drive, and the car that I drive to hybrid and electric. So, with scope 1, we're really waiting on technology. And then obviously the biggest part of our carbon footprint is scope 3, which is the emissions of all of our suppliers. And that's obviously a lot more of a challenge, but we host an annual sustainability summit with all of our suppliers. The virtual purchase power agreement is in conjunction with our suppliers. So we're really, really working to try to influence those guys. And we're seeing a lot of excitement and movement in that direction.
Now, are you sourcing your fiber from responsible or sustainably forested sources? What kinds of efforts are you making to ensure that you're getting material feedstock that carries the lowest environmental impact?
We're very committed to that. We source fiber from a lot of different organizations, from very large paper companies like Westrock and International Paper, to more specialized companies like Ranpak and Pregis that manufacture a lot of paper. We demand that those products have come from sustainable forests and carry that FSC certification. That is the one that is independent. There's also SFI, but that's really controlled by the paper industry, which is not quite as stringent. While I can't sit here and claim that 100% of the fiber that we have has that certification, we're getting very close. Most of our suppliers have gotten that certification across their whole portfolio of fiber-based products, and we really, really encourage that. I think that's fundamental. And we're also really interested in alternative fiber. I think that alternative fiber holds a lot of promise where we're not so dependent on trees.
So sugarcane and other sources like that, bamboo?
Yeah, I think you got to be, the raw material piece is really important. I think we want to be careful that we're not sourcing raw materials from, because they're mowing down rainforests in the Amazon to plant sugarcane, things like that. But I think hemp is really promising. We're selling more and more packaging that is grown from things like mycelium, like mushroom spores. There's some really cool innovations there. There's some guys on the West Coast that are making a foam product that's made out of shrimp casings. So, the amount of innovation that's happening in our industry is really amazing. So again, we got to, I'm a big proponent that alternative fiber is really important, but we have to ask a lot of questions about the raw material. Just because it's quote from a natural resource, if that natural resource is genetically modified corn, that may not be the best solution. So we try to be really, we try to ask a lot of the critical questions.
Well, it's interesting because in the fiber space, there's a straight line from your industry to biomimicry, where we learn how nature solved these problems long before we ever even came along. I want to ask about another thing that is emerging, and that is this idea of molecular or chemical recycling of plastic. And we've talked with a number of folks who are working in that industry on the show. There's also a lot of debate as to whether or not there's really a there there. Are you seeing evidence that plastic can be recycled more successfully, more times than it is today? What's your opinion of that movement? Is it going to make plastic a viable competitor?
We don't have a war on plastic. I think that's, one thing that it's really important. Plastic is an amazing innovation, and there are many areas of the supply chain where actually plastic is the most sustainable product. And
how so?
Well, for instance, like in business-to-business packaging, pretty much every pallet of goods that's shipped anywhere in the world is wrapped with stretch film. Well, right. Stretch film is radically efficient. I can wrap a 5,000-pound load of product with 8 ounces of film. It just doesn't get any better than that. And if you eliminated that product, the amount of other types of packaging that you would have to put on a pallet to ship it would be astronomical. It's really, really efficient. It's also, it doesn't have ink on it. It doesn't have glue on it. It's basically very clear, clean, low density polyethylene that's highly recyclable. So, to me, that is an area where plastic makes a lot of sense. We use in North America annually, we use about 2.5 billion pounds of stretch film, but we only recycle about 5%. So to me, I see a huge opportunity to create circularity there. As opposed to saying we need to eliminate stretch film, which I think would be pretty disastrous. And we would have, we'd be throwing away a lot of product because the amount of damage that we would have in shipping would be radical. So again, food's another good example. I mean, if you eliminating plastic packaging from food, we may get there one day and we may have biofilms that are more sustainable, but plastic keeps food safe and fresh and shelf life, and those things matter. I mean, we don't want to start throwing away food. And I don't want to buy a lot of raw chicken that's wrapped in paper personally. So again,
but again, that's your B2B back room kind of solution that we need to work out. The reverse logistics to move that 2 billion pounds of stretch wrap back for recycling. And because it's a film, it needs to be handled specially. There's the rub. We have to simplify our systems so that we can process a lot more of what's running through them. And it's encouraging to hear you talk about the potential to recycle that plastic as well. Do you see any federal policy emerging that is going to drive the industry in a better direction that for instance, potentially tax carbon or tax plastic in order to encourage people to adopt alternatives that are more sustainable?
I think you'll see more and more EPR laws at the state level. I think it's highly unlikely you'll see it at the federal level, especially given the current climate that we're in. But, the additional taxes, I mean, again, I support EPR. I actually think EPR makes a lot of sense, but it needs to be really, really intelligent in the way that it's implemented. And the policymakers that I've talked to, I've said, hey, if you're going to do EPR laws, you really need to engage packaging professionals because we can bring a lot to the table in understanding where EPR makes sense and where it doesn't. But I would be surprised to see federal plastic tax. Now, I do think that there are going to be some things like there's a returnable bottle bill out there that I think makes a lot of sense. And I think something like that could absolutely pass. We've been advocating recently for a tax incentive for consumer products companies, for capital equipment to run sustainable materials. And I really believe just in the way that the federal government has a 26% federal tax credit for a solar panel, I really believe we need a federal tax credit for companies that want to purchase sustainable packaging equipment, because again, that to me is the biggest barrier for the consumer products companies getting from running non-sustainable packaging to sustainable packaging. In almost every case, it takes millions and millions and millions of dollars in capital equipment investment. And that's where they get stuck. It's like, we want to make this move, but and so I think the federal government, the federal government can make that a lot easier. Correct.
So when you think ahead 5 or 10 years, what percentage of the materials, including paper, plastic, tape, padding, all the stuff that we are familiar with today, can we eliminate? How much more efficient can we get? And I guess the simpler way to put the question is, what is packaging going to look like when we've completed this transition?
I wish I had that crystal ball.
You don't lay awake at night thinking about that?
Well, no, I never stop thinking about it. But no, I really believe, to your point earlier, we will get really, really good at right sizing and optimizing packaging. That will be a big, big deal. We will also get really good at returnable packaging. There will be a lot of areas where we can create systems for returnable containers that make a lot of sense. Again, in simple terms, the more expensive items, it's easier to figure that out, and that's where I think we'll start. When you get into really commodity items, returnable packaging, it just gets so expensive. But the reverse logistics piece is the part that is the most complex. And again, like I said earlier, it requires a level of transparency within the supply chain. But I do think, I think you'll see a major focus on optimizing packaging and right-sizing packaging, and that'll have a huge impact. I also think, and the demand for recycled content in plastic packaging is a really good thing. Right now, every single customer that I deal with is in the plastic packaging that they do purchase, they want recycled content. And people are probably wondering, well, why is there not more recycled content? It's not available. And the reason it's not available is because we don't have clean waste streams in this country. Yeah. About the cleanest waste stream we have right now for plastic is milk jugs. It's one of the reasons that Atlantic is investing several $1 million in putting in some mechanical recycling infrastructure to collect stretch film, because we really believe we're in a pretty good position in the middle of the supply chain to collect those products and create a really high quality post-consumer resin that can go into other products. But again, that's the other thing you'll see. The demand for PCR will encourage investment in mechanical recycling and advanced recycling to be able to create a more supply of that product. But right now, the reason you don't see recycled content in very many things is because it's just not available.
Yeah, well, a 9% plastic recycling rate can be a problem.
It's a problem. Yeah. And again, it goes back to like the municipal recycling facilities. The last estimates I saw to upgrade all of our recycling in the United States would cost about $17 billion. It sounds like a lot of money until you see that we just passed a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill. You think 17 billion, hell, give us half that. And then I think we can make some huge improvements. And there are some municipal recycling facilities around the country. One in particular in Austin, Texas, Balcones. They're very sophisticated. They have optical sorters, and their recycling rates are a lot higher. And Richie Getter, who runs Balcones in Austin, would probably be a good interview for you. Those guys are recycling experts. And again, that they're the model. I mean, if we had high-speed optical sorters, first of all, and then there's a demand for the waste. So all of a sudden there's value. I mean, we got to create a marketplace for waste, and we got to stop looking at it as waste and look at it as a resource. And that's a huge transition for our world as well.
Yeah, I think that's really the key. Is there's a lot of value there. The way I like to describe it is we live in the middle of a mine, and we don't even recognize that we've just got 150 years of industrial waste lying around that we can use to start to be sustainable, simply reusing the stuff we took out of the ground 50, 60, 70 years ago. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us. How can folks follow along on Atlantic Packaging's progress?
We're really active on social media. That may surprise people, like an industrial packaging company, but I really think that in today's world, like, media connects us so well. It's an amazing way to collaborate. So you can follow us on Instagram at Atlantic PKG. We also have an Instagram feed at A New Earth Project, and that's a great place to follow us. We're also on LinkedIn. My profile, Wes Carter at Atlantic Packaging on LinkedIn. Also Atlantic Packaging on LinkedIn. We post very, very regularly about our progress. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and all those areas. So look for A New Earth Project, and that is A New Earth Project, not A New Earth Project, or Atlantic PKG on really every social media platform. I actually think we're even on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok, so I don't follow that. But
you'll have to take somebody's word for it.
My marketing team tells me we're on TikTok. So, but we are. One of the things I think is really important is we celebrate the wins. Our A New Earth Project really is about that. We're documenting the companies that are making the transition to sustainable packaging, and we're really celebrating those wins. We're working a lot with the outdoor industry, because obviously the outdoor industry is highly focused. And we believe today that packaging is a brand attribute. We believe that the way you package your products tells your consumers your ethics as an organization, and the supply chain's waking up to that. And I would leave your viewers with this. I mean, the power is with the people. If the people demand sustainable packaging and reward companies that are doing it the right way, the supply chain will shift. And it's happening right now. I mean, I'm witnessing companies make plastic free by 2025 type commitments. And we want to celebrate that stuff. So again, Atlantic and A New Earth Project is really about celebrating this transition and encouraging everybody to collaborate, because I really believe we can do this. I really do. It just takes will and a level of collaboration that is really possible because of media.
Well, Wes, thank you. That's very encouraging and a great place to finish this conversation. I want to ask you to come back and tell us how it continues to go.
I will absolutely do it. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We've been talking with Wes Carter, who's the president of Atlantic Packaging, a North Carolina-based maker of boxes and shipping solutions, packaging, recyclable mailers, six-pack carriers, and much more. And seriously, folks, what you heard there is somebody who's enthusiastically moving an industry forward. It's incredibly encouraging to hear both on air and off Wes talk about the momentum he's seeing in the packaging space and amongst retailers and consumer packaged goods companies to make progress on this problem. Do consider sending a note to your senator about the the packaging tax incentive, the sustainable packaging tax incentive. It's something that might be of interest. We'll find a link and include that for you in the article that goes with the podcast. This is Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and of course, we will always be back with another innovator interview. In the meantime, take a few minutes to share this podcast and any of the others that we've done with your friends, family, coworkers. Send it to your boss and get them thinking about whether or not they can make changes that will help their business move forward into a more sustainable future. We'll see you on the next show. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.